Guess who's coming to dinner? Mr. Bingley. I'm author Elizabeth Ann West, and welcome to Chapter 7 of For the Love of a Bennet. Georgiana Darcy wore a new gown trimmed with pearls and a dark teal ribbon to set off the seafoam green skirt for her first unofficial dinner in London. Not 2 days after her cousin, Richard Fitzwilliam, left for Brighton, Georgiana sent a note to Caroline Bingley to invite her to dinner with her brother. Due to other scheduling conflicts, the Bingleys were not able to attend until the night before the Darcys planned to leave and join Richard in Brighton. Wishing to support his sister in her newfound confidence in her social graces, Mr. Darcy did not cancel the dinner after finding out about the plans. But he wished he was not required to play host when there were still many preparations he needed to make for their journey. After complimenting his sister for her attire, he politely made his desires known. "In the future, I would prefer you to run invitations by me before you send them out," Mr. Darcy said, quite formally, as they waited in the first-floor drawing-room for their guests. The Bingleys were a quarter-hour late for the invitation, allowing the brother and sister to spend time conversing. "But Mr. Bingley's your closest friend," Georgiana exclaimed, and her brother sniffed. She turned away to hide her mischievous smile. But her companion, Mrs. Ainsley, witnessed her charge's guilt. Happy to see the young woman blossoming out of the frightened, unhappy child from the previous summer, she returned her attention to her stitches and said nothing. For Georgiana, the dinner was her last chance to procure any information from the Bingleys before leaving for Brighton. The mystery surrounding her brother's disappointment provided her with the greatest distraction as she waited patiently to unite with Richard. And Mr. Bingley and his sister had been present for at least part of the time her brother was in the company of Miss Elizabeth Bennet. "So long as you do not possess any notions of meddling into my affairs," Darcy cautioned, and Georgiana's shoulders tensed. Twisting his mouth in frustration, Darcy inhaled deeply and then exhaled slowly to keep his patience. His sister's reaction confirmed his worst fear, that she was on a mission to interrogate the Bingleys about Miss Elizabeth, but it was too late to call off the dinner. "I do not know what you are insinuating. I have given my word that I would not meddle, and I intend to stand by my word." "That is all I ask." "But I have not asked Miss Bingley at all about her time in Hertfordshire. What was the house name again? Netherfield Reach?" "Georgiana!" Mr. Darcy pinched the bridge of his nose, closing his eyes. He resolved that the best course of action was to push his feelings for Miss Elizabeth Bennet out of his heart and mind. The lady in question had made her desires clear, and the sooner he resolved himself to living without her, the better. The butler opened the doors to the drawing-room and announced the arrival of the Bingleys. In a perfect performance, Georgiana rose from her place in the Queen Anne-style chair to stand in front of her brother. As Miss Bingley entered slightly ahead of her brother, she demonstrated a charade of great felicity between the two sisters of the two gentlemen friends. "Miss Darcy! How well you look this evening! Is that a new frock?" Caroline Bingley effused over the trim and cut of Georgiana's gown, while her brother slowly approached his friend he had not seen in a few months. "Darcy," Bingley greeted his host, then fidgeted nervously when Mr. Darcy stood unmoved. Instead of reaching out his hand, Darcy glared at the back of his sister's head. Without looking at Bingley, Darcy apologized. "I am sorry I did not send an invitation. I was in Kent." He did not add that to see his friend risk bringing up the two sisters in Hertfordshire they each loved best, an activity that Darcy had hoped to avoid. Bingley was not even aware of Darcy's regard for Elizabeth, not that his fascination with the elder Bennet, Sister Jane, would have allowed the man to notice much else. "Yes, your aunt, I remember. It was dashed dull without you in town, I must say," Charles Bingley complained, walking closer to Darcy and lightly clapping the man's shoulder with his hand. The friendly touch startled Mr. Darcy out of his stupor, and he nodded. "Charles!" Miss Bingley scolded her brother, proving she was listening carefully to their conversation as she attended Georgiana's queries. "Well, it was dull, Caroline. You dragged me to every ball and dinner held in all of Mayfair, I do believe. Charles leaned in as Mr. Darcy whispered something only the two men could hear. Caroline pursed her lips at her brother's behavior and spoke conspiratorially to Georgiana in mimicry of Mr. Darcy's behavior. "He complains now, but he was happy at every evening. He could not wait to leave that backwater country house that I told him was a terrible idea, and now he pretends I have abused him." Georgiana's spirits rose as Miss Bingley provided the perfect opportunity for an opening question, but she only managed to squawk a vowel sound before her brother elegantly grasped her elbow and led her away. "I believe dinner is ready if we head into the dining room." Mr. Darcy led his sister to avoid any question about Mr. Bingley escorting her, or worse, Mr. Darcy forced to escort Miss Bingley. Georgiana said nothing so as not to spoil a future opportunity to hear more about Hertfordshire, and to her dismay, the seating cards she had placed were moved. Instead of her brother's normal request to seat her across from Mr. Bingley, with Miss Bingley on her left and her brother on her right at the head of the table, she was to sit next to Mr. Bingley, with Mrs. Ainsley beside her. Miss Bingley nearly squealed in delight at the new seating arrangement that placed her in Georgiana's usual seat, as she took it to be a sign of Mr. Darcy showing her particular favor by finally moving her to his right-hand side. The footman had to hurry to pull the chair out for Miss Bingley, as she eagerly walked to her chair, while Miss Darcy felt her hopes of learning more about her brother's romance dwindling. "Miss Darcy?" Mr. Bingley pulled out the chair for Georgiana, to the approving nod of his sister. "Thank you, Mr. Bingley," Georgiana managed, before Caroline Bingley dived into a monologue about the many dinner parties and balls she and her brother had frequented. She only took a break from her descriptions and mild gossip about men and women Georgiana could not keep straight if her life depended upon it, when she took a sip of wine. "The Hursts threw a very well-received dinner, and the guests included a number of members of Parliament, on account of Mrs. Hurst's brother. Lady Sophia, Lord Westham's daughter, came as well. It is said she only accepts invitations that Mr. Quin accepts, but I cannot see how that rumor is true. The Quins are moving up. Sir Quin is very popular, according to Mr. Hurst, but well—" Caroline paused for dramatic effect before she continued, scarcely touching any food on her plate from the first course. Georgiana offered her guest an obligatory sign of interest. "Is there an objection against Mr. Quin?" she asked, trying to understand the various subtle indications of courtship and romantic interest Miss Bingley seemed to be an expert in discerning. "He's Irish," she said, finally taking a bite of her dinner. "Lady Sophia spent the most of the evening engaged almost exclusively with my brother." Caroline crudely pointed with her fork, before again eating instead of monopolizing the conversation. Both Darcys turned their attention to Mr. Bingley, as though they expected a confession or verdict about Lady Sophia, but Mr. Bingley turned a deep shade of red in embarrassment. "I did not seek to raise her hopes. She just bore a remarkable resemblance to Miss Bennet, and so He trailed off as he did not know how to further explain himself. Caroline glared at him while Mr. Darcy cleared his throat, but Georgiana would not allow another opportunity to pass. "Miss Bennet, is she an acquaintance of yours in London?" Georgiana asked, looking between the Bingley siblings in hopes of an answer. Miss Bingley frowned, and Mr. Bingley chuckled. "Oh, no, not here in London. I met her last autumn in Hertfordshire when your brother was with me to visit Netherfield Park." Mr. Bingley stared off into the distance behind his sister's head, reminiscing on memories he was not sharing with the rest of the table. Before Georgiana could get another question out, her brother usurped her. "Bingley, I'm glad Georgiana invited you and your sister this evening, as I had been meaning to speak with you." He paused, earning a glare from his sister. Her brother had just scolded her for this very invitation, and now claimed happiness for the circumstances? But Georgiana was far too well bred to insult her brother in front of company, unlike Miss Bingley. "We are to leave in the morning for Brighton, and I would like to extend the offer of using my home for the remainder of the summer. You can have your effects moved from your club to the suite my cousin frequents," Mr. Darcy said, allowing his invitation to surprise everyone at the table. Charles Bingley ceased his daydreaming and turned his head to his friend. "Truly, I will admit I have considered leaving town for the summer, but Caroline insists we must see out the end of the season," Mr. Bingley said grumpily. Miss Bingley made a small squeaking noise in clearing her throat. "I thought we were to leave for Pemberley next month," she asked, pretending to be confused. I should reopen Netherfield Park when we head north. I do still hold the lease, Mr. Bingley grumbled. Please, Mr. Bingley, I should dearly love to see the estate you all spent last autumn, Georgiana said brightly, eagerly pouncing on the opportunity. But her brother coughed as he nearly choked on his dinner, and she suspected that she should not raise her hopes. We do not have time to tarry in Hertfordshire. It is bad manners of a leaseholder to open the house for only a night or two when a tavern will do, Mr. Darcy explained, and his friend nodded his head in defeat. Traveling to that drafty old house will take us off the main road, Caroline Bingley added, in support of Mr. Darcy's plan to avoid Hertfordshire. Mr. Darcy nodded in agreement to her point, then downed the contents of his wineglass. Why are you off to Brighton? I know you dislike London, but 2 trips in as many months? Mr. Bingley politely inquired, changing the subject away from his leased estate. Georgiana exchanged a glance with her brother to silently ask permission to answer. When he gave her the nod, she set her silverware down and offered the best response she could devise. My cousin and guardian, Colonel Fitzwilliam, received orders there. We could not allow him to enjoy the jolly seaside by himself, she stated, not smiling until she saw her brother do so, in approval. Caroline Bingley began to fan herself. You know, Charles, we could do with a trip to the seaside. I could cancel our other invitations, and we could join Miss Darcy and her brother in Brighton, she said sweetly, instantly earning her brother's easily persuaded opinion. London is dull, he repeated his complaint from the drawing-room, as his friend cleared his throat. I'm afraid you will find it difficult to secure lodgings. I'm told a large regiment of militia have located to the area, and this late in the season there were not any homes for rent along the seashore, he cautioned. There, Caroline, it appears we left it too late, Mr. Bingley stated, believing the matter to be dropped. But Caroline Bingley was not retreating from the goal of avoiding a 6-week separation from Mr. Darcy. Caroline seemed disappointed, and then picked up her wineglass to swirl the contents. Miss Darcy, tell me, will you be socializing in Brighton, attending balls and dinners? Georgiana turned a slight shade of pink and looked to her brother for support. He graciously extended the same rescue that she had performed for him a moment before. Colonel Fitzwilliam and I will determine if there are appropriate events for my sister to attend. If she does so, her companion, Mrs. Ainsley, will join her, Mr. Darcy stated, thwarting Miss Bingley's manipulative attempt to secure an invitation for herself to Brighton. He nodded his head in respect to the woman hired to be his sister's companion. Still, I cannot imagine being your age and braving rooms full of people I do not know. Your courage inspires me, Miss Darcy, Miss Bingley said, complimenting her hostess, as poor Georgiana's face turned a paler shade than her normal complexion. Mr. Darcy sternly glared at Miss Bingley, unhappy with the woman's bullying of Georgiana. At Netherfield Park, he had witnessed her tactics numerous times deployed against Miss Elizabeth Bennet. The difference was that lady was more than capable of serving Miss Bingley's snobbish behavior with a suitable set-down. His heart ached for the pair of fine eyes he once envisioned would become his wife. In doing so, he had hoped Elizabeth would take a hand in steering his sister through the social traps of domains he and Richard could not participate in and protect Georgiana. Brother? Georgiana asked, and Fitzwilliam blinked a few times to pull himself out of his maudlin thoughts of what could never be. Yes, I do apologize. I was not attending, Mr. Darcy said, signaling to his staff to clear the course, as everyone's plate but his own was mostly empty and no longer being touched. Georgiana giggled as her brother performed the very act she had requested, asking if it was the appropriate time to separate. He understood what had transpired, while he had ruminated in his thoughts too long, like Mr. Bingley. Ladies, he said, as they rose, and he rose as well in respect. Mr. Bingley awkwardly stood as well in ceremony. Watching the two of them leave, Mr. Darcy chuckled to himself that at least with Miss Bingley alone, his sister would not hear any positive words about Miss Elizabeth Bennet if the subject came up. Mr. Bingley, on the other hand, would wax eloquently about the Bennets of Longbourn for an hour or more if he was permitted. While Bingley helped himself to the cupboard along the wall, with his back turned to his friend, Darcy devised a plan. Say, Bingley, he began, his friend answered over his shoulder to acknowledge he heard Mr. Darcy. "I hate to be the worst host in all of London, but I wonder if you wouldn't mind helping me make this evening as short as possible. Perhaps telling Caroline you'd like to go home earlier than usual." "Whatever for? Caroline will kill me if the carriage... Caroline will kill me in the carriage if we leave before port and at least one round of cards." Mr. Darcy waited for his friend to no longer be occupied, then addressed him face to face. "It's Georgiana. Before dinner she informed me that she was not quite prepared for our journey tomorrow, and I mean to make it to Rosings by the afternoon. My aunt is difficult, you see, if we are late." "Ah, well, I suppose I can endure the tongue lashing from my sister. You are certain you do not mind me staying here while you're gone?" he asked, licking his lips at the opportunity. "Ah, well, I suppose I can endure the tongue lashing from my sister. You're certain you do not mind me staying here while you are gone?" he asked, licking his lips at the opportunity. A room at his club reminded him too much of the time after his father died. The Hursts had offered for him to stay with them, but Caroline was there. It was hardly a pleasant experience. Either his peace was disturbed by loud, drunken men and their evening companions, or his needling sisters throwing every eligible debutante with a title in his direction. Mr. Darcy laughed, as he could not imagine receiving such an upbraiding from his sister, though Caroline was much closer in age to Charles than the Darcy siblings. "Absolutely not, so long as you don't allow Caroline to move in as well." Mr. Bingley made a face of mock horror. "Never!" Mr. Darcy nodded in agreement with his friend. "And help yourself to my spirits and stores. I shall instruct cook to plan menus to your liking." Deciding a quarter hour was likely enough time for the ladies to see to their needs, the two bachelor friends abandoned the dining room on a shared mission. One man was eager to lord his good fortune over his sister. The other felt grateful for his sister's desire to travel. 6 weeks in Brighton was sure to save Mr. Darcy from pining over Miss Elizabeth Bennet. Thank you for listening. This book is available on all major vendors, including paperback and ebook, on Amazon, Apple iBooks, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, and Kobo. If you enjoyed this chapter and would like to help others find it to enjoy, please consider pressing the like button or the thumbs up on your device. YouTube also offers the ability to subscribe to my channel, entirely for free, so that you will not miss a chapter posting. Finally, I am so grateful to all of the readers who purchase my books to help fund projects like this. If you are a regular reader, or this was your first time visiting with me, please consider leaving a comment down below. Like a lady of the house in Regency times, I consider each one to be like a calling card, and I answer each and every comment. You are the best fan an author could ask for. Until we visit together again.